The British government is under pressure to impose another national lockdown as coronavirus cases continue to surge. Opposition leader Keir Starmer is calling for a 2 to 3 week circuit breaker. He says the government has lost control and is ignoring the advice of scientific experts. In the past 24 hours, the UK has reported more than 17,000 new infections and 143 deaths, the highest since June. Ollie Barrett joins us live from London for the latest. Ollie, why does the government insist that a circuit breaker is not the right approach?
Well, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, says that the restrictions that have just come into force today in terms of a tiered approach to England are worth sticking with, are worth seeing if they work before any further measures are considered. Boris Johnson also says that the testing that is now being carried out in the UK allows the British government to know exactly where outbreaks are taking place, where the incidence of coronavirus is high, and therefore where the highest level of that tiered approach in terms of restrictions need to be focused. Boris Johnson saying at this point, why would you impose particularly tough restrictions on parts of the country where the incidence is low? From the opposition's point of view, from Keir Starmer, the opposition leader's perspective, he now can say that he is the one that is following the science. He can, if cases and deaths and hospitalisations continue to rise, accuse the government of being reckless and not safeguarding the health of the nation. But it's a gamble from his point of view as well, because if Boris Johnson's measures are able to bring the infection rate under control, then he can point to Keir Starmer and say, look, this is an opposition that would have done more harm to the British economy. That wasn't necessary. So a gamble being taken, it is fair to say, by both men.
Ollie, do we know what's driving this surge in infections, though?
The data suggests, when it comes to the UK, that a lot of the transmission at the moment is taking place in household-to-household transmission, and that is why these new restrictions have come into force today and over the last couple of weeks, trying to stop household mixing, cutting down on those social gatherings. That is why the government brought in that 10 p.m. closing time for hospitality to try and slow the rate at which the virus is being spread from individual to individual in those social and hospitality settings. But we also know there's been transmission at universities after students returned, and some of them have been having lectures and lessons in person in quite large numbers. The government is aware of that, but it also knows that some of the transmission has been taking place in school settings. Despite all of that, the opposition and the government both agree at this point that schools must stay open. So even Keir Starmer, in calling for a circuit breaker, is saying that while you could hold it over the half-term period, which is coming up, and therefore there would be a school closure at that point, he says that generally schools must remain open, and Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, agrees with him on that.
Ollie, Northern Ireland has just announced tougher measures. So what are they?
Yeah, these are pretty tough measures. Schools will close in Northern Ireland from Monday for 2 weeks, and then there are a series of restrictions that come into force on Friday and remain in force for 4 weeks. Hospitality, again, is a focus. It'll be limited to takeaway and delivery services. There'll be limits on overnight stays that individuals and families can go on. Hairdressers and beauticians will close for the 4-week period. Supermarkets and off-licence shops will not be allowed to sell alcohol after 8 p.m. Indoor sport and contact sport among adults will be banned for this 4-week period, apart from for elite sport and elite sporting organisations. So effectively, Northern Ireland moving into a circuit breaker or partial lockdown of its own. And as I say, in England at the moment, Boris Johnson hoping, if he can, to avoid a second national lockdown.
All right, thanks for that. Ollie Barrett speaking to us from London.